Hello and welcome to the inside of a dealership. Actually, no, the interior of a beautiful 280S in pastel grey. It's like a primer color. And this amazing half-cloth 70s interior. It's beautiful. It's also a manual. And it serves as the introduction for our video about all the specs, the options, and the different models. It's going to be a big one. Enjoy. The next thing we should probably talk about is trim lines, because there weren't any. The 116 didn't come with any pre-tuned specification levels like Classic or Elegance. Even nowadays, actually, the S-Klasse doesn't have any spec levels. You don't get an S560 Avant-Garde. You do get an AMG line though. But let's rather not get into the fakery of AMG badges and the numbers on today's Mercedes. No, back then the various models you got were the 280, the 350, the 450, the 6.9 and the 300 SD. Now that obviously denoted the engine size, and although give or take 0.1 of a litre here or there, at least back then what it said on the trunk lid or the boot lid was actually what was under the hood. So starting with the 280 models, they used the legendary M110 engine, which was a 2.8 litre inline-six petrol engine. If you want to get technical, it's actually 2,746 cc. So if people say 2.7, don't get upset. They're actually technically right for rounding it down. This engine was actually a bit of an oddity. The cylinder head was double overhead cam, but it was only 2 valves per cylinder. It was a very popular engine that ran from the late 60s quite deep into the 1980s. And the most unkind thing I've ever read about it was that it was a jack of all trade but a master of none. It didn't have huge amounts of power or mountainous torque, but looked after properly, it would go on forever. Like all the others in this range, it was just extremely thirsty. And depending on which model it was in, it made anything from 115 kilowatts to about 136 kilowatts. Torque ranged from 220 to about 240 Newton meters. Anyway, the 280S was the entry-level model. You'll see that there's an E missing. E is German for Einspritzung and means injection. So the S was a carbureted model. That was the one with 115 to 118 kilowatts. It used the Solex 4A dual downdraft carburetor, and it was sold from the start from 1973 to the end in 1980. And they produced 122,848 units of them, the second highest number. In fact, the highest number is the 280 SE, which had the same engine, but with D-Jetronic fuel injection. That's a Bosch system. In fact, all of the V8s also had D-Jetronic electronic fuel injection up to December 1975. And from early 76 onwards, they changed to K-Jetronic, which is a mechanical fuel injection system. The 280 SE made about 130 to 136 kilowatts, and they built 150,593 units of that. It also ran the entire lifespan of the car from 73 to 80. 1 year later, in 1974, the 280 SEL arrived. That's the long wheelbase, same engine, same power, same spec, which is quite a rare model. It even beats the 6.9 by a couple of hundred units. They made 7,032 of them, although it's not the most rare model. We get to that just now. Next in the lineup is the 350 SE, again a car that ran the entire lifespan of the range. It has a 3,499 cc overhead cam 2-valve per cylinder 90-degree V8 petrol engine. It's called an M116. It also did duty in the 109 SL and SLC, and it developed anywhere from 143, 147 to 151 kilowatts, depending on trim, year, and of course those 2 fuel injection systems. That car they produced exactly 51,100 units of. Not soon after that, the L version, the long wheelbase version, arrived, and that was identical in spec. That's actually the most rare one, at 4,266 units. Next up comes the 450 SE. also a car that ran from 1973 to 1980, and that had the M117 V8 engine. It's a continuation of the 116. It's 4,520 cc's, overhead cam, 2-valve per cylinder, 90-degree petrol V8 that pushed out around 165 kilowatts and had quite a bit of torque, newton meters in the 360-370 range. That model was produced 41,604 times. The long wheelbase version, the 450 SEL, was also quite popular. Same engine, same specs, 59,578 of those. Then comes the big boy. In 1975, the 450 SEL 6.9 arrived with a 6,834 cc. There you can see it's technically a 6.8. But anyway, a 6,834 cc overhead cam, 2-valve per cylinder, 90-degree petrol V8. It's called the M100, and it actually does duty in the 600 Grosser as well. And the 6.3, which is the 300 SEL 6.3, the older ones. It pushes out 210 kilowatts and a colossal 549 newton meters of torque. It was only ever made with K-Jetronic fuel injection, and they made 7,380 of those. Last but certainly not least, towards the end of the car's life from 1978 to 1980, they produced the 300 SD, which was around a 3-liter inline 5-cylinder turbo diesel. Apparently the first turbo diesel that Mercedes ever produced in series. It's called an OM617 engine, and it produces anything from 82 to 89 kilowatts, depending on the year model. Torque is it's actually around 230 newton meters, also depending on year. That car had a Bosch indirect injection pump, and they made 28,634 of those for the US and Canada markets only. Right, welcome back to the dealership and this amazing car. I'm quickly going to run you through the gearboxes or the transmissions that were available. The base models, 280s and 350s, came with a 4-speed manual gearbox or manual shifter with the option of a 5-speed manual. You also had the option of a 4-speed automatic on the 280s and a 3-speed automatic on the 350s. Later models got the 4-speed automatic as an option as well. The 3-speed automatic was standard on all 450s. That's the only transmission or box they came with. Same for the 6.9, although that was a reinforced 3-speed automatic gearbox. The 300 SD for the North American market only came with a 4-speed automatic gearbox. I hope I got that right. Sorry about the noise. We're in the middle of a dealership. Right, let's do some dimensions. Each 116 was just over 1,400 millimeters high and 1,870 millimeters wide. The standard wheelbase cars were 4,960 millimeters long, plus an extra 260 millimeters for the American spec bumpers. The long wheelbase models were 100 millimeters longer, so 5,060, plus an extra 274 millimeters for the US bumpers. In terms of weight, the 280s ranged from 1,660 to 1,700 kilograms, while the 350 models were slightly heavier, starting at 1.7 tons. 450 cars added quite a few kilograms on top of that, and the heaviest one was the 6.9 at almost 2 tons. The 300 SD came in at 1,815 kilograms, and once again we'll try and put in all the pounds or torque pounds of foot weight or whatever. Most W116s had a 96-liter fuel tank. As we said before, it was mounted above the rear axle for extra safety. And when that funny little red triangle lights up, it starts digging into the 13-liter reserve. The 300 SD and Special Protection, the armored or guard models, had an 82-liter tank. Once again, we'll try to include the gallons. Is it gallons, Imperial? I think it is. We scoured the internet for an accurate measure of the boot or trunk space, but the only figure we could find was in our shiny brochure, which said approximately 0.58 meters cubed, or 20.4 cubic feet, whatever those are. But you can plainly see the German man fitting lots of schwarzes Gepäck into the trunk. Other dimensions worth noting are an 11.4 meter turning radius, power-assisted recirculating ball-type steering, dual-circuit power braking system with two 78mm ventilated brake discs at the front and two 79 solid discs at the back. Most W116s have a foot-operated parking brake with a dash-mounted release pin, although some markets offered the pull-and-turn handle from later models. The wheel size was 6 or 6.5 by 14 inch on steel wheels with metal hubcaps or 14-inch alloys. The optional 15-inch alloys are quite rare, but still available from your nearest dealer in exchange for an internal organ or 3. Tire size depended on the model. 280s came with the 6J wheels, so their tires were 185/75. 350s and up had the wider rims, so they were 205/70 with different speed ratings, while the 6.9 used 215/70. The suspension is a double wishbone layout with coil springs, hydraulic shock absorbers, and anti-roll bars, as well as brake dive compensation. At the back there was the trusty Mercedes diagonal swing axle setup, while HPS, hydro-pneumatic suspension, was an option on all models except the 6.9, which had it as standard equipment. All 450 and up models also had something called starting torque compensation to prevent the car from squatting down during hard acceleration. The maximum towing weight is 750 kilograms or 1,200 for a trailer with braking system. Okay, I think that's it. Did we get anything wrong or forget your favorite dimension? Please let us know in the comments below. Right, what can I tell you about the performance of these cars? Instead of going through every single one, 10.5 seconds, 9.5 seconds to 100, I'd rather put in a graphic that you can see what the various models did. Also the top speeds, I think we're just going to put those in. These cars, almost all of them ran out of revs, so their top speed is pretty much on the red line or the limiter in top gear, whichever gearbox they came with. Another reason I don't want to put every single one in, because that car had this 4-speed and that one had that 5-speed. As an overall impression, the 6.9 is obviously the fastest one. Even by today's standards, that's quite entertaining. 450s are okay. The 350s struggle a bit, especially if they have the lethargic 3-speed automatic. And then the 280s, that's one of the least powerful engines. A very, very nice sounding engine, the M110, but it has to move a heavy body and there isn't much performance. Unfortunately, I can't comment on the 300 SD, but I would also suspect that its performance is leisurely. Is that right? Please tell us in the comments. What's the performance of a 300 SD like? Or send us a video. Love to see it. Okay, this is going to be a rather tough one, because the trim options on these cars varied between markets, models, and production year. To start with the interior trim, there were 4 options. Full leather, MB-Tex, which is artificial leather or vinyl, velour, or cloth, often with MB-Tex on the side bolsters, and psychedelic 70s cloth patterns in the middle. Model and market-dependent options on these vehicles were air conditioning, central locking, a sunroof, climate control, tempomat or cruise control, a rev counter, electric windows or power windows, rear seat belts, front headrests, rear headrests, seat heaters, heated rear windscreen, fire extinguisher, passenger side rear view mirror, alloy wheels, headlamp washers, and of course, towards the end of the range, ABS brakes. Again, most of those are market dependent and sometimes also age dependent. In later models, you got better options. Stuff like a limited slip differential was only available for the big guns, like the 6.9 obviously. We also found proof of optional telephone installations. #mobile business in the 70s. Regional choices included various radios from probably Becker or Blaupunkt, loudspeaker options and fader control, preheating systems, wind deflectors, a tow bar, chrome fender trims, and driving lights. Some people call them fog lights, others call them spotlights. They were actually copied from the US market, which had those sealed beam double weird headlights and needed an extra set of fog lights. But a lot of people simply added them because they looked good. South African produced cars were only 280S, 280SE and 350SE. The very early ones were semi-knockdown, but after about a year or so they were fully assembled in South Africa. They are instantly recognizable by their different door pockets, as well as a completely different window frame on the interior trim, which is also noticeable from the outside. And then I think American cars had different door pins, but they also did that for other models, so I guess it wasn't specific to the W116. This interior, it's brilliant. Can't have another one, I already have one.